this is a tough task for them to try and find a 2-0 here.
I think the main difficulty as well is the fact that Obey hasn't really looked like they've ever wavered in strength unless it was against Astral Authority. That's really the only team that seemed like they can go toe-to-toe and overcome Obey. So for Elevate, especially considering their recent roster changes, they did have a couple of roster changes that were pretty recent, but it is just very difficult with new team, trying to develop that new team synergy, and somebody who already basically has that. Very
difficult, especially with some of their better players leaving. I mean, Baronic and Michael Checo, you just saw them with Strictly Business, but you're right, Elevate certainly a tall task for them. Zeus going to be their first selection. They banned away a couple Warriors, Robin and Sun Wukong. Obey went with Osiris and the Susano. So Bologna, the obvious open warrior right now with Wukong, Robin, and Osiris all banned, but Elevate still went for Zeus with the first pick.
And it's going to be the Thor on the side of Obey, as well as that Soul selection. Absolutely love this Soul. I'd imagine that's going to be headed towards Delta Marine's hands because, I mean, he's just been so incredible on this Soul. Yeah, it's one of his most comfortable characters. I mean, he's been playing it for more than a year now, and with Soul really rising to prominence as one of the best mid laners in the game right now. I mean, it fits Delta Marine's God pool perfectly. Elevate going to select Nemesis and Ganesh, two very strong picks right now that, you know, Kenshin is going to be on point with that Ganesh, and Elevate with that Nemesis is just going to be able to shred any front line that Obey is certain to draft moving forward. Odin pick, though, for Obey. I was wondering why Obey didn't go for Bologna when that instead of the Thor and Soul, but taking the Odin, locking down that Zeus Nemesis, and taking away the Bologna to make sure that there's not a warrior that can get out easily from that cage. I actually think that Odin does probably one of the best gods for going against the Nemesis. He used to be considered a earlier counter to her back when Nemesis was used to be top of the game as far as picks were concerned, just because that ring prevents her from really escaping. They already have a little bit of AoE, not as much as you would want necessarily for the ring, and considering that that'll be headed towards the solo lane, it could potentially be support though. Could be. I mean, Jelly's played quite a bit of Odin support in his day, but DeWorst has played quite a bit of Odin solo, so I'd imagine it could be in that solo lane. And Hu Yi, you were asking for some more AoE here, Taco. Hu Yi is the perfect pick in this scenario. Absolutely. I think that it'll pair up very well alongside of that combination. And then on top of it all, you've got to consider that they took away a lot of top-tier solo lane picks. No Herc, no Bologna, Osiris, Sun Wukong, Robin. Like, there's not a lot of options left, so you could see Elevate flexing into the Guardian side of things, and I believe that's going to be an Emir solo. Yeah, I like the Emir solo in this scenario. I mean, you're going to be able to clear pretty consistently alongside that Odin clear in the early game, and also box with him fairly effectively. Just very surprised to see Cupid be the pick for Elevate. I mean, on her open, Jing Wei was banned away, but there are plenty of hunters that could have gotten out of that Odin cage, but they went with the Cupid instead. Cupid does really well against Hu Yi, or he can do really well just because Hu Yi doesn't have a CC immune ultimate, but the same could be said for the Cupid. If you're Hu Yi, you drop your ult on top of Cupid's, so it really prevents him from trying to find that follow-up damage. Sure. I think that Elevate are definitely going to have to be very careful with their positioning, considering how easy it is for Obey to just lock them down, and there it is. It's going to be Sobek headed towards the support role, and DeWorst rocking that Odin solo. Just really trying to focus out these immobile characters, I think, with the Sobek pick. I assume Jelly's going to be looking at Neximus in that solo lane and Mr. Teep in the mid. Those plucks onto characters that don't have dashes, it's very difficult to survive as Zeus once you get plucked in by Sobek. The only hope is that once Neximus starts being a little bit more involved in the team fighting scenarios, he could potentially get those walls off to prevent the pluck from coming through, potentially even cut off Jelly and sort of isolate members of Obey, because Elevate have a really strong pick composition. If they can isolate a member, then they'll be looking pretty strong as far as engages are concerned. Plenty of single target damage, no doubt, as well as some strong AoE between that Ganesh ultimate, the Zeus ultimate, even the Ymir and Cupid ult's pretty good in those jungle team fights. Look for Elevate to be taking the majority of their fights outside of the lanes, whereas Obey, they can really do it wherever they choose because Odin Ring creates a small zone for all of their abilities to be funneled into. They don't need to use the map's geometry to their advantage. Delta Marine and Jelly are able to invade on the left side, strip away Elevate's red buff on the right. Mifflin and DeWorst a little more worried about their own buffs than getting wave pressure at this stage. Completely reasonable as well. I mean, Anamir has great clear early on. DeWorst, I think he's just trying to get out and...
Does he have his jump? Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, there it is. It was on cooldown.
Ah, okay. He must have used it to clear the blue buff. Well, Mr. Teep and Kenshin used that opportunity to strip away Obey's speed, so Mifflin not going to have a speed buff for the early game because Dr. L already secured elevates on the right side of the map. Obey gets the better end on the left side in terms of buff secure. Got all 4, it looks like, once they're able to drop the purple after Mancer finishes the red. But Elevate, they get 3 out of 4 on the right-hand side. And speed buff, I mean, we joke about it all the time that junglers need their speed, but in the early game, speed buff for me is the most impactful buff.
Oh, it's by far probably the best time period to get that buff because you have so much mobility and a lot of rotation ability as far as rolling around the map, especially as a Thor, where you're looking for that early level 5 to 7 gank.
Gonna be up on cooldown. That buff should be respawning around that time, but you're right. I mean, just trying to get to that level 5 to 7 mark, a little bit harder whenever you don't have boots and you don't have a buff that increases your movement speed. These two drafts, we already talked about where these teams want to be fighting. Both teams have some pretty solid late game here, though, Taco. Who do you favor if this game goes late?
I would probably favor Obey, and the only thing is I kind of anticipate Obey to keep losing that speed buff on that solo lane side just because now that Elevate were able to secure that timer, they're probably going to just look for the continuous invades, especially knowing that their duo lane side is basically already under control of Obey.
Mancer's got quite the lead already. He's sitting at level 5, whereas Griffin, he's having to back, still sitting at that level 4 mark. Grouping on the right-hand side is Jelly, just going to come in and farm up this mid wave, giving him his ultimate ability at level 5. Mifflin and DeWorst have basically been duo laning this entire time. Not going into their own jungle a whole lot, just accepting the farm that's coming to them.
And that's kind of what you need to do. Mifflin knows that his team has already secured the other side of the map's buffs, and they don't really have a whole lot of contests since Delta Marine is hanging out on the dual lane side. He can't help them with the fire elementals, for example. So he's just going to hang out, leech as much farm from DeWorst as possible because whether or not it's ideal, it's still an Odin, and his primary target is to just place that Odin ring in team fights.
And it's giving Delta Marine quite a bit of solo farm in the mid. He's sitting at level 6 now. Now he's trying to transition that over to the left-hand side as Griffin going to meet up with Delta Marine in the jungle. A little bit of damage traded between the two. Ricochet going to miss there from Mancer, but forces Griffin back for the moment. There's the Fields of Love. Good ultimate out of Griffin. Prevents Obey from going aggressive onto that red buff, which looks like it was secured by Mr. Teep and the rest of Elevate. Maybe not. No one on Elevate seems to want to go get it. Pluck off the mark as Griffin did have purification beads in case that had hit. No, it did go the way of Elevate as Teep picks it up. Delta Marine gonna go and farm that wave on the left and then come and try and help that invade. But Elevate secure both buffs on the left-hand side. So where Obey had the advantage early on the left, Elevate answer back with a good rotation from Kenshin. Now it's up to Obey to secure their right side buff to make sure they don't fall behind.
And I mean, that's pretty reasonable of a rotation to make. You can see DeWorst already trying to lock this one down, but Dr. L is not having any of it, looking for the invade. No, he's looking for the kill.
DeWorst jumped and immediately Dr. L punishes him. First blood goes Elevate's way fairly easily. Mifflin now using his ultimate probably just to get out of danger here. I'd imagine it going to use it to start up these back harpies as Elevate does indeed get the speed buff. I don't know what DeWorst thought was going to happen if he jumped on that.
At least the secure.
Yeah, but
he was hoping for that secure.
Didn't get it either way. Rough stuff on the right side of the map for Obey. Again, it's looking at that level lead. Neximus has a 3-level lead. Well, 2 levels now on DeWorst. That's a significant advantage at the 5-minute mark.
Well, also, he might not have expected the other 2 members from Elevate to be so close by. He might have thought that it was pretty much just Dr. L, potentially Neximus starting to stroll his way over there. So I think the mindset there was at least get the XP if I die, but that's always unfortunate whenever it happens. And that's the kind of pressure, though, that Elevate need to keep applying onto Obey. Now that they've already established this little bit of an early game lead, this is kind of just the abusable stage for the Amir versus Odin matchup.
It really is. I mean, already through that Raven Shield even, Neximus doing quite a bit of poke to DeWorst. And if Dr. L can continue this lead, that's going to make life much easier for Elevate. Nemesis definitely one of the best characters in terms of getting early leads and hanging on to them. Nemesis can be a facilitator in the jungle. It can also be an absolute hyper carry when getting a lead.
He's looking for Mifflin. He's going to be able to hit him with the initial slice and dice slow, trading out some poke, but definitely Dr. L getting the better end of it. And now with the hammer down, there's nowhere for him to go. Neximus is going to clean this one up.
Perfect wall from Neximus, and Mifflin is a little bit off the mark with that hammer. It actually went into the wall on the fire giant, so he couldn't teleport as far as he wanted to. Good recognition from Dr. L that that's an opportunity for a kill, and Mifflin just never got a chance to get out because of that beautiful wall out of Neximus.
And that's the kind of map awareness, too, that Neximus needs to be on. That's what he needs to try and ensure that he lands every single time, is those walls that just separate these members from each other.
Did like the idea for Mifflin to hold on to the purification beads. He knows he's dead every which way in that scenario. No aggressive beads there, so at least he'll have that for the next engagement, but he's going to need them for sure with how far behind that right side of the map is. Both members sitting 2 levels down. 2 levels up, though, is Mancer on the left, the newest member of this roster. Seems to me that Obey is putting a lot of trust in him to make sure that he can play well in this matchup, because otherwise things aren't going to go too well for the Obey boys.
The only downside here, I would say, for Obey is the fact that it is Dr. L who's acquiring so much farm from hanging around the soul lane side. So Dr. L, if he wanted to, could potentially start spending a lot of time just aggressing onto Mancer in this dual lane, but he could just be a little bit more interested in ensuring that Mifflin and Dora stay as far behind as possible.
And Mancer definitely has been known to push up a little bit at times, get baited into some one-on-one engagements that maybe he shouldn't be taking, as Dr. L and Neximus take Obey's blue buff once more. And again, they want that speed for the 3rd time in a row. Delta Marine's here for the first time, though, and Delta Marine, as I mentioned, has gotten quite a bit of solo farm in that mid lane, with Mifflin spending the majority of his time on the right-hand side. DeWorst gonna jump in, get Nemulted, and get frozen. There he goes. Double stun from Mifflin as he comes crashing down. Delta Marine gonna drop the ultimate right on top. Teep gonna zone away with his own, but a perfect wall out of Mifflin throws Dr. L right into the waiting clutches of Jelly. Kenshin's here and silences out Jelly for the moment, but Neximus is gonna get plucked back in and deleted by Delta Marine. DeWorst was the bait, and Elevate took it. Obey find 2 kills on the right side.
That was a perfect wall by Mifflin, just locking both of those members out so that they couldn't escape from the lurking in the waters from Jelly.
Jelly gonna take a lot of damage here. In fact, he's gonna die to Teep. Chain lightning, that's the dream scenario. Every time you see 2 people grouped up as Zeus, you start licking your chops, because they're food in that sort of scenario. Pen Boots coming up big there for Teep.
That was a lot of damage really fast. And the thing is, too, Jelly isn't even that far behind. It's just because he hasn't had a chance to build any actual protection just yet.
All HP with that Emerald Mail so far. The Traveler's Shoes as well. Doesn't have the Lono's mask. Instead went for the Bumbas. Saying if that was Lono's, maybe that's enough HP to let Jelly survive. Either way, that's a tough death to take there. Looks like he wanted to be the aggressor in that scenario. Was trying to pluck Teep into tower, and Teep said, all right, dude, if you want to try and stand there right in front of me, I'll take it.
Aggressive pathing for sure. I think that Jelly was feeling a little bit confident after they just secured such a solid counter engage in that soul lane side. I don't think he was really expecting that much damage that fast.
So if you're Mancer in this scenario, Taco, you're ahead in your duo lane. This is kind of similar to a lot of ranked games. You're ahead, but your team's feeding on the right side of the map. How do you play it?
You see how Griffin is like pretty much hiding underneath his T1 tower? You start rotating. There's no point hanging out in this lane. Even if he takes your T1 tower, you have a bigger chance, or a better chance of being a much larger impact for your team by rotating and make something happen there.
Neximus gets himself in a bit of trouble, but DeWorst has so little mana that can't commit to the Bird Bomb. I like the idea of Neximus going for the Shards of Ice to try and catch DeWorst, jumping in on top of him. Good pluck onto Teep. The Purification Beads were too late, and immediately lurking under the lethal waters. Mifflin misses the ultimate onto the mid laner instead, trying to focus out Dr. L. Mifflin going to escape with the hammer. Jelly has been kind of left alone. A beautiful chain lightning out of Teep. It's going to do quite a bit of damage. Perfect wall once more from Mifflin. Prevents the additional chase from Dr. L. And everyone's low, but no one's dead except DeWorst. He's dead.
Except worse. He's having a rough time in this solo lane side. He just fell behind so early on, and this is kind of just what tends to happen to Odin's if you don't get that initial skyrocketing of gold and XP. You have a really rough time in the solo lane, and I mean the Nemesis thing kind of works both ways. Sure, you can trap her inside of that ring with you, but can't really do a whole lot if she decides to go on you.
Yeah, she's not locked in here with you. You're locked in there with her. That's been basically what's been going on with Dr. L in that cage, has been cutting down to worse as soon as the cage comes down. And you're right, I mean, Odin, I can't think of many less safe clear options than either standing dead center of the wave with Raven Shield or jumping on top of it with the lunge. I mean, there's no easy way to clear the wave as Odin.
Amir just punishes Odin so well, because even if he does opt for that bird bomb clear, you constantly have to worry about him freezing you and then just dropping his second ability onto you.
It's true. Bird bomb can get interrupted right as you hit the ground, and if you get CC'd in that scenario, the shield doesn't go off, and neither does the jump damage. Can be really hard countered by gods like Ymir. Wukong as well, a fairly decent counter pick. A lot of players like to try and use that Ox form to knock up right as the bird bomb comes down. And don't know if that's been what's going on, but I know that there's been a lot of deaths going on that right side, and the tower is the next casualty of war. 500 gold goes Elevate's way. Only up about 1,000 right now, but, or excuse me, about 1,700, close to 2,000, but certainly quite a bit of experience, 2,500 there.
This experience difference is basically all in solo and jungle right now. Everywhere else, as far as Obey is concerned, is doing well. It's genuinely just because of the fact that Doris had a couple of early deaths. Same thing for Mifflin. He had that early death, and being caught off guard a little bit, I think that Elevate just aggressed at the right times.
Mancer wanted to go aggressive against 2 members of Elevate. Mifflin is clearly just done hanging out on this right-hand side as Doris is getting all by himself. Meanwhile, Dr. L's going to find Delta Marine in that mid lane. Now Mifflin's heading over to this left side. He's going to stun Neximus under the tower. The full combo and the body blocks are good as well. Doris gets a much-needed reprieve from the pressure from Neximus. In fact, going to get a kill for himself. Elevate now looking towards the Gold Fury, but Jelly going to push Dr. L underneath that tower.
That was a pretty cheeky pluck by Jelly, just opting to go into the ultimate because I think he was looking for that potential contest on the Gold Fury that Elevate had in fact started pulling.
Both ultimates were used though. Mancer used his as well. Now Mancer going to return to the lane. For the time being, Jelly trying to get the steal, but Silence out, can do nothing about it. Gold Fury goes down Elevate's way. Dr. L cuts up Jelly as well. So 7-3 now. Elevate get the Gold Fury and a kill, pushing their lead up to about a 3,000 gold lead.
First real lead of the game pretty much in Elevate's favor, and again, just that experience difference is pretty much sitting in between. Same thing, a little bit more, actually just spiked about 400 experience right there, so probably some more buffs just being secured by Elevate.
And you said that Obey's team composition does better, a little bit better in the late game, but I don't think that's to say that Elevate is any slouch, as Dr. L again locked in the cage. This time DeWorst isn't going to get cut down in there, and even was able to secure his own blue. So DeWorst starting to be able to punch back a little bit, getting some magical protection and health online, both of which are much needed.
And the Vanguard as well, just having pretty much all DeWorst needs to do right now is just build as tanky as possible. Maybe throw in like a damage item at the very end, but right now just all frontline because he knows he's getting targeted out.
And he's got an Aegis as a second relic. He's hit level 12, went back to base and went for the very defensive option. You think this was his best survivability option? Most of the time we see Bracer, but this is, Aegis can do the same thing as Bracer, but more at times.
I think he's more concerned about the sudden burst damage, and Bracer can't necessarily save you from that because sure, you have the Bracer potential, but if you're just getting completely 100-0'd by an Ymir ultimate or even the Zeus lightning and detonate charges and everything, there's only so much Bracer can actually save you from.
I agree. I think that Bracer is one of those things that everyone is all of a sudden saying, oh my god, Bracer is so good, and it is, but there are a lot of times where Aegis or Beads does the exact same thing that Bracer does. Bracer obviously giving you the 3-second instant cooldown reduction. That's very, very strong, but in terms of outright survivability, I still think that Aegis and Beads take the cake in that sort of scenarios.
And I mean, I can't really blame him either, considering that when you take 3 deaths so early on and you're constantly getting Nemesis ulted or just even pressured into your T2 tower by Neximus, it kind of needs to play that more defensive route. Typically, you'd see like a shell or something. Well, I thought, though, it's Kenshin who's getting a little bit of aggression now. Dash cut short by Jelly standing in front.
But look at where Dr. L is coming around the backside. Slices Delta Marine in that Zeus ultimate, but the Aegis and Disapparator are good to get Delta Marine out of the detonate damage. Kenshin in trouble, and immediately Dr. L throws the ultimate onto Mifflin, who already used the hammer around. The back comes Nexus, but he misses the freeze! Mifflin's gonna be able to escape, and now it's a two-man cage from DeWorst. Phantom is available for Neximus, but he was too busy charging the ultimate to give it to Dr. L, and Obey are the ones who end up on top with the kill.
That was an excellent fight all around from Obey. From start to finish, they disengaged at the proper moments. Mifflin had a pretty sick juke wrapping around Neximus. People might be wondering, how do you miss a cone ability? If you cut your corners tight enough around that Amir, he actually can't catch you in that little blind spot.
Oh, easily the best juke for Ymir is just running circles around him. You just tight little circles around the Ymir until he misses the freeze, because it is so difficult. A cone is very large, yes, and a little bit easier to hit at the back end of it, but at the very narrow beginning, it's the best place to find the juke. Mancer trying to bait Griffin, but kind of tips his hand there that someone was coming and lurking in the wings. Mifflin was on the way.
Well, I think also just Griffin has been playing this lane incredibly passive anyway. He hasn't really looked for any sort of aggression against Mancer, because Mancer's kind of had this lead from the start.
Only about a level now, though. Griffin has started to get a little bit back for himself. Gonna assist Kenshin and dropping that red buff. A lot of new faces on this Elevate roster. Lost, as we mentioned, lost Baronic and Michael Checo, two Starboys. Or excuse me, to Strictly Business, lost Delny as well. Tough stuff. Double freeze there from Neximus, and Mifflin has no purification beads, but he is able to hammer away. No follow-up CC coming out of Kenshin. Now the speed buff is started up from Obey. Neximus trying to get it, but is not successful. Double cage there from DeWorst. Remember, Neximus does have that Phantom. Now he pops it, and Dr. L should be able to get out of this cage. There it goes. He's out of there. Jelly eats the Nemesis ultimate, but again, not a ton of follow-up off of it. A lot of ado about nothing in that right side.
Still best case scenario for Obey, just for nobody to die. Hold on, I could be potentially needing to take that back, as the wall and the freeze is good onto Jelly. A lot of damage coming through, and Mancer on this backside with the ultimate.
The Portal Demon goes down, and it elevates to take DeWorst. His Aegis pays off there as he gets out of that Shards of Ice. Delta Marine in a moment of trouble, but Disapparate gets him out of danger quickly enough. Elevate get the objective. Good zoning there by Neximus, who I thought may have been a little bit out of position, but clearly in the right spot. It was all a bait, and Elevate get the objective either way.
And I still think that Obey got away with a lot there. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't actually suffer any casualties, as Mifflin looks for the double tap onto Mr. Teep.
Ganesh really does make life difficult for Thor. I mean, that channeled silence not only really hurts his DPS in terms of silencing out that Berserker's Barrage at any time, but stopping him from teleporting to the hammer and stopping him from following up if he does teleport to the hammer. Tough stuff. Gold Fury very low already. Dr. L tried to get in there and steal it away, but it's Obey Alliance's Gold Fury to take, I believe. They get it. Now Jelly's on the run. Dr. L trying to catch up to him. That sprint popped by Jelly to get enough distance to escape what was very close there. Obey managed to close that gold gap just a little bit more.
And what I'm kind of expecting Elevate to do now that they've lost the Gold Fury is to just keep up this grouping and then look to see if they can siege down the T1 tower.
And that's exactly what they're looking for, Taco. 500 gold waiting for them in form of this Tier 1. Will go down. Mifflin also in the sky looking to continue the chase, but all of Elevate so far away that no chance to catch up to them there. So Elevate do get something, a little bit of gold, a little bit less than the Gold Fury gives you, but a little bit more map control, and that's always a crucial factor in these games.
I think in this circumstance, the map pressure could potentially also work in Obey's favor, because they don't necessarily have to worry as much about looking to sit underneath that T1 tower side. I mean, they've been struggling a lot in the solo lane aspect, so it could be a little bit easier for them to just focus their groupings more on that like duo lane side. And
if you can find Zeus out of position, you may have to step up a little bit more to find the wave. It doesn't hurt Soul as much to lose your Tier 1 tower. It doesn't, I mean, it never feels good, but it's not as much of an issue as it would be for a character like Zeus, who very immobile, as we've harped on many times. Mr. T is on top of the player damage charts right now, though, doing a pretty solid job on that Zeus. 1, 0, and 2 has not fallen quite yet, in large part due to how good the front line has been from Elevate. Dr. L and Neximus have just made life incredibly difficult for Obey's backline to do anything of value in these team fights.
I think especially for Mifflin, since he fell behind a little bit early on, he's just had a really hard time bouncing back just because, I mean, you already mentioned it, when you're trying to pull off your Thor combos and you're either getting Nemesis ulted, Emir frozen, or just straight up silenced by the Ganesh, it can become incredibly difficult just to deal as much damage as you'd like to.
Look at the build coming out of Neximus right now. Oh, actually, hold that thought. Gank going on the left-hand side. Mifflin came crashing down. Griffin is on the run, but Dr. L's the focus. Perfect wall again. Prevents his escape route, and Mancer is going to be able to find it. Mifflin hasn't found a kill quite yet, but his walls have certainly set up his teammates thus far. And now it's Obey's turn to start sieging up. Real quick, before we get back to the siege, Ritual Dagger here for Neximus, getting a lower cooldown on that Phantom and Teleport. How do you feel about it?
I think that it's pretty reasonable considering that they're clearly concerned about Dewars. They know that Dewars is just going to be the person who presses his fourth ability as soon as the team fights start breaking out. But other than that, like, I mean, you kind of just always have to keep that in mind. Dewars isn't interested in being that damaging frontline character. He just wants to drop his ring.
Neximus drops the wall. Jelly and Delta Marine just committing to try and get through, but Mancer is all alone and gone. Neximus finds his third, elevates 8th in total. So 1 for 1, Obey stayed around a little bit too long. Good wall there onto Jelly from Neximus and the freeze following up. Wall there to try and prevent any additional aggression, but Jelly getting body blocked beautifully just off the mark with that wall. Neximus full committed. Delta Marine went for the red buff and got it and escaped somehow.
Hardly. He hardly got out of that one.
Calculated.
It's just, no.
Look, red buffs are really good, okay? Like, I totally understand that play. You gotta get the red.
You mages in your red buffs, man.
We need it. Stop taking it.
Mancer's doing a lot of damage, okay?
Below Delta Marine. Mid mages deserve the red buff. Del Worst is here. Mifflin charging up that ultimate. No way anyone saw him there. Kenshin the only target though. Kenshin is going to get plucked back in. Nice ultimate out of Griffin, and that returns plenty of damage onto Obey. Jelly falling pretty low. He's going to lurk underneath the waters for the time being. Dr. L coming around the backside, looking for Mifflin. Needs one more auto attack to do it, but he's stunned and controlled. Bird Bomb is Aegis out there by Dr. L. He's trying to retreat to the safety of his team, who knocked down that tier 2 tower to ensure that he's getting out of danger and secure themselves 1,500 more gold.
Neximus even dropping the wall just in case Obey even thought about trying to pursue. So all around, just another really strong siege by Elevate. And you can see underneath that T2 tower, even when Obey look to aggress, they have to be incredibly careful about how much they're willing to group up, because Elevate have this Cupid ultimate, they've got the Emir freezes, and all of their damage just really combines so well together if they are moving as one unit.
The Zeus ultimate as well. I mean, that's a huge AoE damage that you got to be worried about. Elevate does have to be a little bit worried about this Gold Fury, but they got the Oracles before they backed, so they know that Obey is trying to do it. They don't know, however, that Obey is also simultaneously doing the Portal Demon. Gold Fury started here by Elevate and full committed to with that Zeus ultimate. This is toast. Elevate get their second of the game. Obey do trade it out for that Portal Demon on the right-hand side, like I mentioned, but Elevate coming out on top in total in that engagement.
But if you look at the experience lead, it's really not that drastic, especially considering that this is, again, kind of just due to the fact that Dwarves fell behind so early.
Do you think Obey could have done Fire Giant there? With Soul? I think they could have done it. I mean, everyone was on the left side of the map for Elevate.
Probably would have realized that something was up.
Maybe. It could be either way. Certainly the safer call to go for the Portal Demon. You always wonder about what could have been with those risky shot calls. They pay off so often, and they also lose you games so often. So certainly not a bad look to take the safer route. We're 25 minutes in. Elevate, this new roster, looking pretty strong here, Taco. Up 8-5 over Obey in kills. More importantly, about 5,000 gold. Neximus has been a big reason why. He's focused out right now by the boys on Obey, locked in that cage. Decides to go into the Shards of Ice instead of going for the Phantom. Now he pops it to get out of danger. So using both the ultimate and the relic to make sure he's safe.
Kind of interesting that he waited until after the effects had basically worn off from the Odin Ring to pop that Phantom, thinking he might have been concerned about a Thor wall potentially, or some other form of CC from Obey. He just wanted to get out of there as fast as possible.
Thor wall certainly a big deterrent. Oh, Mifflin not going to get into the sky. Nemesis all just shredding through him so quickly. That Thor channel time is taking a little bit too long. So now Elevate, they've got the man advantage and they're trying to push it. Fields of Love not going to get anybody there underneath the tier 2, but it does push Delta Marine and Mancer back enough to try and secure this. Jelly showed up though, and Dr. L's the one tanking the tower. Jelly get a miss with the pluck. DeWurst has to use the Aegis as he bird bombs in. No cage quite yet for him. Tier 2 tower still stands, surprisingly enough, and Elevate decide they've had enough. They want to back up for at least for the moment.
And I think the Elevator kind of just looking to do this regrouping fact that they do have a Cupid on their team. They have the sustain due to the hearts from Cupid, or hives, I should say. And on top of that, I think that Elevate can keep pressuring this.
Bird bomb in from DeWurst, and Silence down immediately. Now he gets the cage down, and Mancer drops the ult on top of it. DeWurst is able to escape, but Phantom was back up already. No, it was a second Phantom, I'm sorry. Coming out of Kenshin. There's the triple freeze coming out of Neximus, but not enough damage to find any kills. Tier 2 tower finally falls as Mifflin finds a couple tanks on the backside. Jelly wants to keep this engagement going as he plucks Griffin back and immediately eats a Nemesis ult for his trouble. Supernova not doing a whole lot there out of Delta Marine, but no one can continue the chase from Elevate. They get the tier 2, no kills, but a couple important relics out of Obey.
Just so much consistent CC on the side of Elevate. Obey have a really strong draft that they can have the execution to lock it down. They've just had so many issues working around this crowd control aspect.
It was Obey trying to bait Elevate into the Fire Giant pit. Jelly off the mark with the pluck. Now the Dharmic Pillars come down. He's going to pop a sprint to get rid of that slow, but can't get rid of that one. Dr. L finds number 610, double digits for Elevate on the board. Obey getting doubled up in kills. They've only got 5. Now Neximus is back. He teleported in, finds the freeze onto Delta Marine. No beads, nowhere to go, but the Aegis is good for the moment. Detonate should be coming through anytime soon, but he already used it, I suppose, during that Aegis, and Delta Marine again able to escape with 1 HP, but now Elevate has got the massive power play advantage. Jelly's down, Delta Marine is low. They're going to go for the objective, and they're going to go for Mancer. He falls quickly. Mifflin up in the sky looking to try and steal this away. It goes down, but Elevate get the Fire Giant. Mifflin is going to have to use his Aegis to try and get away, but the wall is perfect from Neximus once more. Misses the freeze, shouts to speed buff. Mifflin's going to be able to get away. Don't know if I can say the same about DeWurst though, Taco.
He's just jumping up and down, he knows. Dr. L really doesn't need a whole lot to lock this one down. Although he might now know the wall from Neximus is too strong, and the freeze is actually going to be the ultimate death card for the worst.
So Elevate, take the tier 2. That means all the towers are off the map. Dr. L going to eat a double tap, but sitting at level 20. Mifflin only at level 17. Can't quite find much more damage than what he's putting out right now. Freeze going to miss from Neximus, as is the wall. Jelly looking for a pluck, but decides to use it to get back into the safety of his own Phoenix. Wall double tap is good from Mifflin, and Lurking in the Waters does a little bit of poke to the opposition, but Elevate using that Fire Giant and Cupid sustain to their advantage.
The main concern now for Jelly is that without his ultimate being available, he's going to have a really hard time trying to look for the initiation factor, because I can imagine that they're just going to immediately CC him as soon as he goes in for the pluck.
It does have a lot of health, but not a lot of protections. No sovereignty for the support. Stone of Gaia, basically all about that HP and HP 5. Heartward Amulet as well, but very little physical protection here for Jelly, and I think that's why we saw Dr. L just shred him oh so quickly on that right-hand side just before the Fire Giant. Doesn't take much whenever Dr. L has that much penetration to Titan's Bane, and Jelly's really relying only on, what, the Gauntlet of Thebes.
Plus, Dr. L also just has a ton of mobility when you factor in the speed buffs and his Heartseeker.
Lots of extra mobility. Plenty of damage in that build as well. I like this option to go for the Mantle of Discord last item as well. So I already realized that he's good in terms of damage. He's got an ultimate that's taken away 40% of someone's health instantly that he can't miss. Who needs damage when you've got that? Instead gets a little bit more protection, some CDR, and of course that excellent passive to get him out of danger in the case of emergency.
And right now, I think that Elevate didn't really have too much of a choice as far as Obey securing that Portal Demon. Everybody kind of just wanted to backspend that gold. They probably all had a ton of gold in hand prior to backing after sieging for a decent bit and then just securing general team fight kills.
Elevate looking like they're in a good spot to win game number 1. They need to find the 2-0 to keep their hopes at DreamHack Valencia alive, and then they need some help because Sword can't win a game later on today in our final set. Mancer was on the map, is no longer. Lucky number 13 for Elevate. They're now up over 11,000 gold and beginning their Phoenix Siege on the left-hand side. Only Dr. L's ultimate was used there, so he's got a little bit of CDR in that build between the Mantle of Discord and the Hydra's Lament. Should be up shortly enough. Darman Pillars come down from Kenshin. Immediately, Jelly's in some trouble. Mifflin comes crashing down. Is immediately just dead. See you later. Jelly's erased as well. Jaworth's going to fall for the 5th time this game. And Elevate are going to take game 1 against the defending world champs.
There's no way they don't look for this. They just have to. I mean, it's only Delta Marine left to defend. His speeds have already been expended. He doesn't even get a chance to go into the Saporate. He's just actually got disapparated. Deicide
for Elevate, 17-5 in 32 minutes. An impressive performance from beginning to end. Neither